Hi everyone, it's Michelle here from The Hub, and welcome to this year's Book Week Scotland event, which for the first time will be an online event. So this year we have teamed up with David MacPhail, who's a Scottish children's author and has visited The Hub many times before. David has produced 3 videos about 3 of his pieces of work, and you can watch these videos separately online via our YouTube channel. And when you do, and once you have finished watching one or all 3, you can send questions to David via our website. There's a question form which you can fill in, and David will then answer all these questions and produce another video where he will answer the questions, which will then be shown on the 20th of November, which is actually our assigned date for the Book Week Scotland, because as you know, the Book Week Scotland will be running from the 16th to the 20th of November this year. The second video David has made is all about a book called Top-Secret Grandad and Me, and it is set in Glasgow, and some parts actually play quite near the Hub, so that's very exciting, and it is best suitable for ages P4, P5.
Hello, my name's David MacPhail and I'm an author, and I'm speaking to you today for Book Week for the Language Hub, one of my favourite places, and I'm speaking to you about reading and writing and stuff like that. I'm doing it online, of course, because everything's different this year for Book Week. Usually I go out during Book Week in November and I travel all up and down the country speaking to different schools, and I come back and I'm knackered. It's really busy, but this week I'm going to be relaxing at home and doing a bit of reading and stuff. It's fantastic. I have a hot chocolate sitting here talking to you, yeah. It's not all bad, and in future I think it might be like this a bit more often. So I'm going to be talking to you today about maybe some of my books, and then you guys are going to go away maybe and think up some questions and then come back with those questions, and I'm going to do a separate video later answering those questions. So have a think about any questions you want to ask. So I thought I would talk to you today about Top-Secret Grandad and Me. This is a book series, it's behind me here. And it's about this kid who solves mysteries with the help of his ghostly granddad. As you can see, yes, he's a ghost. He's a ghost. And this is the kid here, his name's Jay Patel. He's the one who solves the mysteries. It's set in Glasgow, and some of it is set not far from my friends at the Language Hub, not far at all. There are scenes in the books, and especially in this first book in the series here, which is called Death by Tumble Dryer, which are set in places like the Squinty Bridge and the Scottish Exhibition Centre and places like that. And the second book's a bit different because they're in Glasgow at the beginning, but then they go away to this remote country house hotel near Loch Lomond, and there's a country house hotel mystery to solve there. So yeah, this guy, Jay Patel, he decides to become a detective about 9 months after his father mysteriously disappears. His father was this stage magician, and he was called the Great Maharishi, and he was on stage at the King's Theatre in Glasgow, and he was in the middle of this stage routine, and it's quite a famous one. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the Great Vanishing Act. What happens, or what's supposed to happen? What's supposed to happen for him during this act was that he's on stage. He had this big turban type thing with a jewel in the middle and a huge cape, and this big box is wheeled onto the stage by his assistant, and stops right in the middle at the front of the stage, and they open the box is empty. It's like a coffin type shape, so it's quite long, and so the Great Maharishi, he gives a flick of his cape and he gets inside the box, and his assistant closes the box, and she does all these sorts of things, like she gets a hula hoop and she she goes right round it with a hula hoop so that you know that there's no like special strings or doors or anything like that. She puts her hand underneath so that you know there's no special bottom that you're not seeing, and she twirls it around as well. She twirls it around and then she stops and she knocks it and she opens it again, and lo and behold, he's gone. He has vanished into thin air from inside a box. It's amazing. The crowd launch into rapturous applause. This is amazing. How did he do it? How did he do it? I don't know. And then, about a minute later, just as the applause is dying down, a spotlight goes up on the wings, and then the great Maharishi prances on like this. Ha ha! And the crowd go wild again. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what's supposed to happen. But what happened with Jay Patel's dad was a bit different on this one night in Glasgow, because everything went so well. He got into the box, his assistant closed the door and span it around, did that with the hula hoop and that with the hand underneath, and then opened it again, and he was gone, and the crowd applauded. Yeah, brilliant, fantastic. And then the spotlight went up on the wings, and the crowd were looking like, oh, where is he? Is he going to come on there? Yeah. And nothing happened. Nothing. The assistant was standing there like this. Where are you? Hello? And the crowd were like, eventually, they're like, he's gone. He'd vanished into thin air. The great Maharishi had disappeared off the face of the earth, and the police couldn't help. No one knew where he'd gone. So that's why Jay Patel decides to become a detective. And then his granddad comes back from the dead to become a ghost and to help him solve mysteries. So I'm going to start by reading you from chapter 1 of Death by Soup, okay? And this is the soggy beginning. It was raining in Glasgow, which shouldn't come as a surprise. It's a bit like saying it's sunny in Mallorca. It's always sunny in Mallorca. Or saying the air on Mars is a bit thin. Yeah, obvs. This is Glasgow. It rains a lot. But this wasn't your normal rain, the kind that gently pitter-patters on your roof and drips off umbrellas. This was a full-blown monsoon, battering against the window of our flat in a wild and soggy torrent. Usually I'm the one caught out in weather like that, because that's just my luck. I'm normally that drenched boy you pass in your warm car, soaked to the skin and looking like something a drowned rat would have a good laugh at. But on this occasion, I was lucky enough to be indoors. In the kitchen, in fact, sitting at the table and looking out through the rain-blurred window. Something's not right, I said. What do you mean, boy? Asked Grandad in an Indian accent fused with Glaswegian. Or should I say, the ghost of my granddad who sat beside me. Well, he didn't really sit, having no body to sit with. More floated in a sort of sitting position, which he often did to make himself feel less like what he was, an actual, real-life spectre. Not that it did any good. His face still had a green tinge, the kind you get with a bad case of seasickness, and he was completely see-through. To top it off, he wore a Macintosh raincoat with the collar turned up, a fedora hat, and a pair of sunglasses. He looked ridiculous. Thankfully, nobody else could see him but me. I leant forward and whispered so that Mum couldn't hear. Can't you take your coat and hat off? We're indoors, you know. I am a ghost, Jayesh, he replied. I can do what I want. Sorry, what's not right, dear? Asked Mum, flouncing around the kitchen. She was cooking supper, though it looked more like she was doing some kind of weird modern dance. She had long flowing hair and wore a long flowing scarf and a long flowing dress, all of which were completely impractical for cooking, or indeed any form of human activity. I stared down at the letter in my hands, which had dropped through our door out of the blue just a few weeks before. It was from Yummy Cola, the drinks company. Mrs. K. Patel and Master J. Patel, congratulations. You have won a fabulous weekend break at a luxury country house hotel. We look forward to welcoming you at Brightborough Manor. The thing is, Mum, you said you never entered any competition for yummy cola. She scoffed. Why would I do that? Fizzy drinks are bad for your aura. And they make you burp. That figured. My mum never drank anything that wasn't 100% organic. Her idea of a refreshing beverage was a glass of carrot juice. If she wanted to push the boat out, she might squeeze some honey in it, but that was about it. Don't you get it? I said. If you didn't enter the competition, and I didn't enter the competition, how did we win the competition? What? She asked, nonplussed. I mean, how did we win a competition we didn't put in for? Mum blinked, then shook her head and ladled something hot and steaming into a bowl, which I hoped against all hope was edible. Jay, there's an age-old saying, never look a gift horse in the mouth. She is right, son, said Grandad. And besides, look at the brochure. He jabbed his finger at the photos of the hotel and the rooms, which looked quite plush. Jacuzzi's in every room, boy! So, I whispered, you can't even use a jacuzzi, you did. Do not rub it in, he said, offended. What did you say? Asked Mum. It was always so difficult having two different conversations at once. I was constantly getting mixed up. Frankly, people were beginning to think I was weird. Apart from Mum, who was already a bit weird herself. There's another saying, I replied. If something looks too good to be true, then it probably is. Huh, huffed Grandad. Kids these days, they do not know they are living. When I was your age, living in India, I would have walked 20 miles for a jacuzzi. Jacuzzis weren't even invented then, I said. But then Mum looked at me quizzically, wondering what I was talking about. I shook my head. Nothing. Look, it's how we won is the question. You think it is some kind of scam? Said Grandad. A scam? I rubbed my chin. I'm not sure. It's just odd, that's all. Grandad was staring intently at the overhead light. His spooky eyeballs were twirling around in their sockets. He was watching a fly that was circling the lampshade. His face flashed with determination. That fly is annoying me. I'm going to ghost whack it. Grandad had ghostly powers. He could touch things, move things about, and even kick people. As for his spectral sneezes, achoo! They could blow up tiny whirlwinds. His special powers had helped me out of more than a few tight spots during our detective work. But lately, he'd been suffering a crisis of confidence, a bit like a striker who could no longer score goals. He didn't believe he could do it. Grandad floated higher until his eyes were level with the bottom of the lampshade. He studied the fly's movements closely for a few seconds before slowly stretching out his arms. Yeah! He slapped his hands shut on the fly. Unfortunately, his hands just went right through each other. The fly didn't feel a thing. It just kept going round and round in circles. Grandad's face fell, and he sunk back down to the table like a deflated balloon. I am a rubbish ghost. A scam! Mum snatched up a mallet and whacked the large gong that sat on the table. Ding! A gong that was about a foot away from my head. My eardrums quivered, and then she yelled at the top of her voice, Dimmer! Which at least stopped my eardrums quivering and made them wobble instead. All this was for Granny's benefit, as she was hard of hearing. Granny was a tiny terrier of a woman, and I mean tiny. She was once offered a part as one of Snow White's dwarves in the local panto, and she was shorter than some of the children playing the part of the dwarves. Lately, she'd taken up karate. She burst through the door, dressed in a white karate outfit, with a bandana wrapped round her head. She half swaggered, half waddled to the table. I blamed both the swagger and the waddle on the bodybuilding supplements she'd been taking. She said she wanted to look like she was in an action movie. I wasn't sure that a movie about karate grannies would be that good. Ah, there's my girl. said Grandad, grinning at her fondly. "Just as beautiful as the day I married her." Granny suddenly snarled. A flash of white sleeve, and she lashed her arm out and karate chopped the fly in midair. Huzzah! The fly dropped with one pathetic final buzz, and then thrashed around helplessly on its back on the kitchen floor. Grandad's grin only got bigger. "Ah, what a woman!" "Well," said Mum, "if it's a scam to get money out of his dearie, they chose the wrong people to mess with." She wasn't wrong there. We didn't have any money to scam. Times were tight, especially since Dad disappeared off the face of the earth 10 months previously. Mum plonked the soup bowls in front of us. Ta-da! Like she'd done some kind of magic trick. Kale, seaweed and turnip soup. I stared down at the contents of my bowl. My stomach turned. It looked like something you'd find at the bottom of a ditch. Smelt like it too. Yes, times truly were tight. I glanced at Granny. Her face was as white as her karate outfit. Her eye twitched at Mum. "Notice she doesn't eat it," she croaked. Mum gave an airy flick of her hand. "I had a big lunch." Grandad chortled. "Huh, for once, I'm glad I'm dead." "Come on, eat up," Mum smiled. "We're off to the hotel early tomorrow morning. We're going to make a day of it." Granny caught my eye and nodded towards the pot plant near the kitchen table. "See, Jayesh," said Grandad, "the things your granny does for you." And he was right, because she was offering me her turn at using the plant pot to dispose of my dinner, which was amazingly generous given the food that was on offer. I nodded thankfully, and then waited until Mum's back was turned and tipped the contents of the bowl into the pot. The plant gulped it up. A big rubbery thing. Goodness knows how it survived with so much of Mum's cooking poured into it, but it did. In fact, it looked like it was thriving. Granny winked at me. She adjusted her bandana, picked up her spoon and took a deep breath. I placed my hand on her shoulder and gave it a sympathetic squeeze. She reminded me of one of those kamikaze pilots from the Second World War preparing to dive to their fiery, or in her case, soupy death. That, my friends, was chapter 1 from the newest book in the series, Death by Soup. As I said, there's another one here called Death by Tumble Dryer. The thing about Top-Secret Grandad and Me, with the thing about Jay Patel is he uses mind maps. If you've heard of mind maps, you may have heard of them in school. They're like ways of setting out information with big clouds, and they're all connected. It's a way of connecting everything up. He uses mind maps to solve his mysteries. There's a mind map that he uses, and that's what a mind map looks like. And that's the one from Death by Tumble Dryer. It doesn't give anything away, don't worry. It doesn't tell you who the murderer was. But it's all in here. He uses mind maps to solve his mysteries, and it's interesting because I sometimes use mind maps, especially when plotting out books like this, because, you know, with mystery books there are lots of characters and they're all in different places and they're all doing different things and they're all up to different things, and so it kind of helps when you're plotting stuff out, and you can use it as well for coming up with story ideas. In fact, my office here is festooned with bits of paper that I've put together. They're mind maps for stories. And that's how I come up with some of my story ideas, using mind maps. I can show you actually if it helps. When you're writing, it might actually help you. What I'm going to do is try something out. I'm going to try something out here. I'm going to move the camera a little bit so you can see this. There we go. Can you see that? Can you see that? I'm going to move this a little bit. Whoops. Move this further. Right, I'm just going to show you how I do this, alright? So this is I'm just going to show you briefly a mind map. So what I do is, with the Jay Patel books, what I did was I started off with an idea for a story about a funny detective. I thought, what's this book going to be about? See that? What? It's a funny detective. So that's how I started off, and I wrote this. Sorry, beg your pardon. Oh, that's better. You can see it better. So I wrote this thing, this bit of paper, and I put it up on my wall, and then I just thought about it. I thought, funny detective. Yeah, and I've got other questions like, where's it going to be set? So that's another question. Who is this funny detective going to be, you know? So then I thought, well, I could set it in America. That would be good. A lot of good crime things are set in America. And I could call the guy something cool, like, I don't know, Seth Jones. That would be interesting. And then I thought, wait a minute. If he's a detective, he needs a sidekick. You know, like Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. So I thought about a sidekick. What's a good sidekick? What's a good sidekick? I thought, a good sidekick. I need a good sidekick, a really good one. And then I suddenly thought, what would be the best? The best sidekick would be someone who is invisible. Invisible, yeah, invisible, yeah, invisible. Ooh, who's invisible? Oh, I know, a ghost. So that's how I came up with a ghost. But then I thought, wait a minute. It's supposed to be a funny book. Why don't I come up with a really rubbish sidekick instead? Rubbish. Let's have a rubbish sidekick. What would be the most rubbish sidekick? Can you think of one? Yeah, I had lots of thoughts. I thought about an animal or something. But then I thought, well, do you know who the most rubbish sidekick would be? It would be my granddad. I don't know about your granddad. Maybe your granddad would be a brilliant sidekick, but my granddad, you know, he would just be complaining about his feet all the time and the cost of stuff. So I thought, a ghost granddad, that'd be a great idea. And then suddenly this character came into my head, and he was based on this man I used to know. He was a doctor from Glasgow. He was an Indian doctor. And he was a very tall man, and he used to stand above you, and his face used to come down like this in a kind of frown. Would look at you, and then he would say something, and then 5 minutes would pass, and you would think, wait a minute, what he said there, that was actually quite funny. Did he mean that to be funny? And he did, actually. It turned out he has something, what you would call a dry sense of humour. So then I had this idea for Grandad. The Grandad from Top-Secret Grandad. That all came from the sidekick idea. And then all of a sudden, things started falling into place. Rather than America, I was going to set it in Glasgow, because of this character. And I wasn't going to call this kid Seth Jones, he was going to be called Jay Patel. Suddenly, I had Top Secret Grandad. Top Secret. He's top secret because nobody knows about him except for Jay. Grandad. So I had the book that came together very, very fast. Once I thought about a sidekick. And you've got the other characters that you have to add in, like Mum. You've heard about Mum there. So Jay's mum, she likes to think of herself as a child of nature, but really she's just this mad Glaswegian woman who likes to punch people. So Mum, and then there's Granny, who's really tiny but actually quite fierce. And in every book she's into something different. So in that book there, she's into karate. In the first book, she's into DIY. So the next one she'll be into marathon running or something. So and then of course you've got Dad. So I kept thinking about Dad. What about his dad? And that's how I came up for the idea for the whole series. Like Jay trying to find his missing dad. And what that means also is there's a reason for Dad being missing. What's the reason? Well, I can't tell you that yet. And it also means there's a big baddie. And I can't plot that out here because I would spoil things for you. But it does mean there's a big baddie somewhere. In actual fact, I'm going to put you back up here. In actual fact, there's a clue as to who the baddie is. And that clue is in both the books. A very, very good clue. Both both these, but it's just one clue. It's in both of these books somewhere. Nobody across the whole country, nobody anywhere in the country has managed to figure out who the baddie is. But if you really think, and you know your stuff, you will figure it out. But it's in there somewhere. Can't tell you. If you have any guesses, then let me know, okay? And what I would do is, what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw in some prizes to this. We're having a competition, so you can win Death by Soup, or you can win Thorfinn, the Nicest Viking, and the Putrid Potion. So these prizes will be available to you. So if you have a think about questions, and then come back to me, and I'm going to do another video answering these questions. Okay, so I hope this has been useful for your writing and stuff, and I hope to hear your questions, and I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks very much for listening. I'll see you later. Bye.